We ready?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay,
You're the
so
boss, go.
welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Radnor Township School District. It is Tuesday, February 21st. Before we get started with public comment, are there any introductions or administrative remarks?
I do have a few. Previously at a Finance Committee meeting, we had an inquiry from a member of the public regarding the facility rentals and the fees that we have been collecting. It was noted that some of them have gone down. I just wanted to update the board about some of the changes that have occurred. We'd have had numerous changes that have occurred since 14-15 that have impacted some of the revenues that we receive. So one of the first things that occurred was we moved to full-day kindergarten, and when we moved to full-day kindergarten, we lost the rental facility from Family Support Services for their half-day program that they ran for before and after care. At the middle school, there were some programs that were run by the township that are no longer being run, and so there was some rental income that was lost there. At the high school, we had the Radnor Day Camp. It moved from the high school when we were doing the facility, the grounds there, and the parking lots and the turf field, and it moved to Radnor Elementary School. So that was a change that we saw, decreasing the rent at the high school, but increasing the rent at Radnor Elementary. Also at Ithan, we had the loss of an IU-operated classroom, which was a revenue source which we no longer received. And then for the properties located on Roberts Road in 14-15, the property was vacant for 7 months. And I was also asked a question about the facilities budget at a Finance Committee meeting regarding what makes up their dues and fees of $46,000. That's actually dues for and fees for elevator and building inspections, and then $40,000 in stormwater fees that we pay to the township. And those are my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
40,000?
Yeah. We have a lot of property. Okay. So before we go into the public comment, just reminding that we have issued new guidelines for public comment. The sign-up sheet is on the table. If you've not already signed in and intend to make comment, if you would please do so there. And the only thing I will note is that I think the public comment thing indicates that the board question at rtsd.org is available, but I think that's only for our main meetings, not for committee meetings.
It is for committee meetings.
It is?
It is available now for committee meetings. Okay, so board questions at rtsd.org. If you're streaming live and need to ask a question, we're here for you. Okay, public comment.
Was that sarcasm I detected?
Nope, I am always here for you.
Is he going off on the stormwater fees?
He is. I'm ignoring him.
I'm right there with you, hon.
Patty. Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace in Wayne. A quick question, because in taking my notes last week, and Ms. Decal, it was very nice to give us all about the parking spaces. The one question was, were there preferential spots, and I don't believe that you listed any. There are the nonprofit 3 spaces, but I wanted to clarify that. And another question, I looked through the minutes that didn't appear to be answered yet, and that was on the increase in substitute costs. Is that only because the number of substitute days have increased this past year, and we're still wondering why that is, or is there additional cost due to the services that we're using? We're going to talk about the first item, I believe, is BoardDocs, the new program. And just a couple questions. It shows that one of the features, you'll be able to automatically identify when there are changes that have been made to the initial agenda that goes out, if there are changes made prior to a meeting. For the staff and board members, my question, can we make that available to the public also? for changes to the attachment. It makes it easier when you see that there's been a new attachment added, you know exactly where the changes were made without having to go through. Because I usually print them off in the weekend, so anybody who does that early. Also, the question that was not answered in the letter that was received as to whether or not there is any tracking via cookies that will be done on the new program. And also, I know that the program is listed as $9,000 per year, which on a $96 million budget could be considered peanuts. But the question is, since it is new, and is there savings that will be experienced elsewhere because of this new program that's being initiated by the staff and the board in preparing for the meetings. Under special education expenditures, a question as to from 2014 to 15, 2014-15 to 2015-16 school year, nursing services went from $88,843 to $342,489. Why? And just curious, the student transportation services, and this is for special education expenditures, went down almost 33,000. Are fewer students being transported, or is it the cost of the transportation services with our new buses that show that difference? And then also on the retirement contributions, it shows the salary base total for the new budget at $42,465 and change, and the salary base total used for the exemption, the referendum exception, is identical to last year's, which is $37,644. 37 million, I'm sorry, 644,000. Why is the salary base used for the referendum lower than what the actual salary base projected is? Thank you.
We'll address some of those as we go along. Okay, any other public comment this time? If not, then any concerns, if any issues with the minutes we're talking about? No. Okay? Okay. Okay, so everybody's all right with the meeting minutes from prior meeting. All right, so then let's move on to board docs. Item number 1.
When Michael Petiti came to the Finance Committee meeting back in December, there were some additional questions that were asked, and Michael reached out to the company to get information and answers to the questions that were asked at that Finance Committee meeting, specifically whether or not you would be able to use it on a mobile app, and the answer to that is yes. If you will receive notifications when a new document is added, and that is not available. We are able to transfer PDFs. There is
So that's not available to the public.
no automatic notification is available to the public. I don't know if BoardDocs will identify things that have changed when you go into it, but you will not be able to get an email. There was a specific question asked if an individual could sign up to get an email if attachments had been changed, and the answer
Right,
to
but
that
is
no.
it true that as board members or as staff members you would? I know this doesn't answer that question, but
I think that's part of the creating the agenda. You create the agenda, you put something in, somebody else sees it and says this needs to be changed. In the background before it's finished
Published.
and hit
Uh-huh.
public.
But once it's published, as board members, do we get notification if a change has been made? So we publish on Friday,
And there shouldn't be any.
and if anything changes on Monday, but say something gets added last minute,
I
don't know
don't know.
if the board gets notification. So it's not just a question of the public, it's,
And we
wait,
can.
I got Tony in the back is raising his hand.
No, just currently we have board docs for just the policy because we're members of PSBA. So if there is a change to one of our policies in BoardDocs, I do get an email.
Okay, so internally, somehow,
Somehow I get an email.
Somebody's
I'm not sure
getting-
completely how it works, but I think because I'm registered,
Okay.
that's the person going in there. So I don't know if that's
Okay.
going to be the same, but there is some notification.
all right, so more definition around that, about how it's used.
Okay, and I can find that out.
All right. But what would be, even if you can't push out to the, if there's no public if there's no notification that can be pushed out more broadly, at least if there's some flag in there that says, updated, it turns red, or it says that it's been updated recently, or some indication to make it easy to see that something's changed.
Okay, we will find an answer to that question.
Okay.
I have a question about the OCR aspect. It says, new BoardDocs accessibility features were implemented under the direction of the OCR. Will this be an assistance in any other OCR questions that we're dealing with?
What it is it's just helpful that this would be one less area that we have to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
So we believe that those are all of the answers to the questions that Michael was aware of and got answers for back in January. You also have a copy of an email from Patty Calderoni to myself regarding what the cost will be for the first year for 16-17. You can see from her email, if we sign the contract by March 1st, it would take 8 weeks to set up our system, and we would be billed for May and June at $750 a month, or $1,500, and then a one-time $1,000 site setup fee, and the annual bill for 2017-18 would be $9,000.
So are there any cost savings by doing this? What's the offset?
We haven't actually done an analysis of the offset. We do believe that it will take less time for an individual to prepare the minutes because you actually use a minute writer within BoardDocs. We think that it will be much more convenient for the users who are going to be obtaining the materials off the website, because when you see the board resolution item, the attachment is listed right there with it, so you don't have to go to the end to look through and search all the attachments. So we think it will be a lot more convenient, and we hope that with departments being able to complete the entire part of their area of the board meeting, that it will save time in the superintendent's office preparing that document.
I'd like to see if at some point we can quantify it in some sort of way. I'm all for improved quality, and clearly that is an added feature of this. But if there's overtime related to like all the hassle, if we don't have to pay a driver to run around and drop off everybody's stuff. I mean, there's lots of ways of measuring.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility too, because currently we do pay a courier to deliver board packets, so that would be something that we would not need to necessarily do.
Yeah, that was, the time savings in putting it together was one of the things that Dr. Costello was talking about in the paper.
All the
driving,
photocopying
the
and,
photocopying, the amount of
So
time.
there's got to be some quantification that we can be doing around it. Okay. Okay. So this will come to the board as a whole.
I would like to put that on the board agenda for the meeting on the 28th of February for the board as a whole.
Anybody have any
No, I think we have to do it.
issues or
It's just-
concerns with that?
If
Already?
it just eases some of the tension and the
Well, improved quality is a good thing
yeah,
too. So
I think it's that's a win.
okay. Alrighty then. Subject number 2. Budget Update Act 1 exceptions.
So in your packet, you have the governor's proposed basic ed funding. I've highlighted Radnor on that page, so you can see that based on the governor's proposed budget, that Radnor is due to receive an increase to their basic ed funding. You can see that in the budget I had it budgeted at $2,048,000, and the additional funding that we'll receive is $35,416. So that's a change that will be incorporated into the budget that was released in December. If you turn the page, you can see special education funding. You can see there as well, we are identified to get an increase in our subsidy. Again, you can see what it was budgeted at, the $1,278,000. So the proposed additional funding is just over $10,000. That change will be incorporated. In regards to the Ready to Learn block grant, what was budgeted is exactly what we're going to be receiving. And transportation numbers have not yet been released, but it is in all likelihood, we will actually end up, we will have a decrease to our transportation subsidy. The governor has long been in favor of contracted transportation, so I believe that we will lose roughly $75,000. So we will have actually lost revenue
Net
overall. Overall.
So how do we, our confidence factors, given last year's budgeting, state level issues, we're feeling confident enough to put these numbers in?
I'm feeling confident enough to put these numbers in based on everything that we're being told from PSBA as well as PASBO. They are pretty confident that the governor's budget will go through without a lot of
Okay.
So an additional 46,000, but you're saying we've got 75,000 at risk in the other?
In
Yes.
transportation.
In transportation.
When do you expect transportation?
I expect transportation numbers by the end of this week.
Okay, so it'll all be incorporated. Next time we see a revised budget, they'll all be in.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay? Anybody have any questions on that piece? Otherwise, then we got to go to the,
Is this, in flipping through the governor's budget summary, I thought I pulled somewhere, roughly 80% of pupil transportation in the Commonwealth is provided through contracted services.
Correct.
So we're in the 20%.
We're in the 20%.
So they're not too interested, okay.
well, moreover, we're also being asked to pay more for buses with the new technology, right? So
So
something
one
to
is-
talk about. Maybe our Citizens Advisory Committee can have some fun with that one. Okay, so the next one on our list was the referendum
Right.
exceptions.
So one of the directions that we were given in January when we passed the budget was to apply for the exceptions for special education and for retirement. So you can see here that we have applied for both of those. When we look at the special education expenditures, this is actually based on what you reported on your annual financial report for the two prior fiscal years for 2014-15 and 2015-16. It was noted that nursing services had a substantial increase. That's a direct result under the expenditure details where it shows guidance and psychological services about in the middle of the page.
Yep.
Speech pathology. We changed the way we allocate expenses for special education students in 15-16 over what we did in 14-15. In 15-16, we took the total number of special education students and we allocated those costs based on a percentage of the number of students in each of the various areas. We felt that that actually gives a more accurate cost accounting of the services that we're providing for our special education students, as opposed to just trying to identify nursing services that specifically relate to special education students themselves.
So it's really just a reallocation from one place to another.
Correct. So when you look, there is a schedule in the very back of the annual financial report where it shows all of these various areas. It shows what was reported in the prior fiscal year for the total, and then it'll show the special education cost. It does that for the two fiscal years. Then you would actually be able to see more of that change. Because the total number in dollars for guidance and psychological services for regular ed and special education students hasn't significantly increased. It's just in the area of special education because we're pulling more out based on the number of special ed students that we have.
Okay.
And so you're doing the same there with legal? So, like legal was 157,000 and it's down to 94,000?
So what we do with legal fees, we actually have a special education legal fee account for things that are directly related to special education
Right.
students, and that's how we pull that out there.
So that's that is
That one is
that's a
That's real.
number.
That's real.
Okay.
That's a real number. So you can see when we go through this calculation that we qualify for $352,488 in special education exception expenditures. I have not heard back from the state. They still have a couple more weeks in order to let us know if we qualify for that, so that number could change slightly. When we look at the retirement contributions, one of the things you have to remember with this calculation is this calculation goes back to what actually occurred in 2011, 2012, and you're capped on that in regards to the base salary. So when you look, you have to report on line A, you report what your total base salary is for the current fiscal year and then your future fiscal year. That comes right up, that's all of your 100 accounts. And then for the referendum exception, you're limited to the salary base from 2011, 2012. So you can see that up above, and you can see that's the same for each one of those years. And then you take the current contribution rate for PSERS, and you continue with the calculation. The revenue is capped at 50% of the expenditure based on the salary base from 2011, 2012. So if you were looking at our revenue in the 7820, this number here that's on this report would be less than what's in the current budget. So you can see once we go through that entire calculation, we qualify for $335,497. Again, PDE has not approved that yet. We do anticipate hearing within the next couple of weeks.
Is that salary based 2011, 2012, is that rolling or ever going to move, or is it just a point in time?
It's a point in time. It will not move.
Why did they choose that year?
I have no idea why that specific year was chosen.
Cap it, I'm sure.
I'm
'cause
sure to
otherwise-
cap it.
Yeah, because
But when
otherwise,
that exception was created, yeah, well, Act One
Act One was earlier
started
than
in
that.
a year
Yeah,
before that.
2006. So,
We didn't start actually following Act One, though. 2006, we didn't start actually budgeting to Act One until 2009-10 school year.
9-10 is, yes.
I'd have to go back and look. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
'cause we did a-
see if I can find out why they selected 2010, 2000, or 2011, 2012.
Well, it keeps you, I
Yeah,
can
but is that
imagine
when
it
the
keeps you
PSERS,
from.
but if you pulled out your PSERS chart, is that when the
PSERS
increases started? Yeah.
Yeah.
But how about if I look on
Yeah.
the,
I bet it's when the increases
I'll look and
started
get an answer for
on the
next.
Just
PSERS.
curious.
Yeah, it's curiosity, don't,
Yeah, don't
it's-
spend a lot of time on it. I was just curious
Yeah,
why they,
don't spend a lot of time.
knowing the legislature, they probably just threw a dart at the wall.
Okay. All righty. Then, anybody got any questions on that? Again, this is applied for, not approved, and not an obligation that we're using it or not using it. It's just
Correct.
information.
It's been applied for. We don't have to use any. We can use some or we can use none.
Okay.
Okay? The
Capital
next-
budget.
Next item on the agenda is capital budget. I just wanted to let the Finance Committee know that the Facilities Committee did review this. This has been revised. This capital budget is different than what was released back in December. We've gone through and re-identified things based on the priority, with priority one being items that are of safety concern, not necessarily meaning that someone will be injured, but that the bleachers, for example, are approaching the end of their useful life. So these projects have been done. The Facilities Committee has started to have some discussion on this. I anticipate that they will have more discussion at the March meeting, and then they'll be making a recommendation to the whole board on how to fund some of these projects. Some of the things that we did talk about is the fact that money had been reserved for the site project at Ithan and the removal of the modulars at Wayne Elementary. The modulars were removed as part of the construction project that occurred, so we have $250,000 that, 200,000, I believe, hold on, let me look. 200,000 that is cash on hand and available at Wayne, and then $100,000 that's cash on hand available at Eisen Elementary based on the bids that came in and will be awarded at the February meeting for this site work.
Yeah, but when we say available, they're not necessarily available for those schools, they're just available.
That's correct.
Unspent funds from projects at those schools.
Exactly. So that does not mean that those dollars will stay in those buildings. Those dollars are freed up to help offset some of the other projects that have been identified, such as the bleachers.
So, and I'm sorry, because I did not bring with me my previous packet. So where did we end up with the net based on where you guys are in the facilities committee?
So one of the things we talked about in facilities, where we were talking a little bit about the bleachers and how we could budget for that project over multiple fiscal years. The project was increased from $600,000 in the draft budget to $1 million for 2017, 2018. And one of the things we talked about was budgeting a smaller amount in 2017-18, which would allow us to get some better cost estimates and know what the actual amount of that project would be. The project won't be completed until the fall of 2018. So it would actually go over 2 fiscal years. And one of the things that would help us do that would be if we would budget $350,000 to $400,000 in 2017-18, and then in 2018-19, when we're developing the budget, revisit that amount so that we can budget exactly what we need to complete the project.
Okay, so I just tell you, I struggle mightily with $1 million for bleachers. We have absolutely got to find a better way to do it, and I'm interested later to understand who's working on that project and what experience they have to really work with contractors, because that's crazy.
So,
Sorry.
so I can answer that question just in a general overview. So the real issue is we don't have anybody with expertise to really be working on that project.
Uh-huh.
So we would like to be able to have some money available so that we can get a better number and have a better idea. That $1 million is based on a neighboring district's project, what they had spent, and their project was much larger than what we anticipate doing, so we kind of reduced it by a few $100,000. But really, that $1 million is a stab in the dark.
Okay. So what is the process?
So right now, there's no money in the capital budget for us to be able to get some expertise to help us come up with cost estimates for that project. So we're kind of on hold and sort of waiting. We do know that boosters probably are likely to help contribute to the cost of that project, help offset the cost of that project. And Mr. Bechtold and Mr. Friel have been working about trying to schedule and coordinate a meeting with them.
Yeah, I can tell you that's not the kind of money that a booster club is just sitting around on. I mean, that's a 5-year plan for a booster club to build up that kind of cash. Even the football booster club, who's pretty hard working, and the band and color guard, booster clubs are probably the most predominant clubs in terms of fundraising and the ones who would really be using it, because unless the lacrosse team and the
Basketball, maybe?
they just gave us all their funds in order to do the turf field replacement. So
Well, that was a different lacrosse.
no, I'm saying any of those
I mean,
committees
we
where you
wouldn't be
would.
expecting them to pay for the whole
No,
thing.
but
just
I know,
kick
but
in
even
something.
$100,000 is a boatload of money
Oh,
for
yeah.
those committees. So I mean, for those
But the $1 million
clubs, so-
was like the $300,000. I mean, the facilities we talked about, the $300,000 that was put in years ago. That was a shot in the dark, and then the $1 million is kind of the other end shot in the dark based on what these 2 other districts did. So it's she's asking for some money so that we can get somebody in here to
But that,
turn the lights on, so we're not just
okay, well, fair enough. So, but we had agreed and entered into a contract with Blackney Hayes to look at the high school and talk about the bubble at the high school. And I know they came back and reported, why wouldn't we just use Blackney Hayes?
We can certainly use someone. The issue is
But
that
were
there's
there any
no
dollars left
there's-
over from that activity?
I've
And
already-
what kind of dollars are we
I've
talking about?
incorporated those dollars in, any cash on hand
That was left
available,
over.
That's left over.
So-
I've incorporated into this document. If you think that we should entertain a proposal from Blackney Hayes, we can certainly do that, but keep in mind that will reduce the amount of cash on hand that's available as we move into the 17-18.
So this is, the
year.
problem is getting appropriate bids to replace bleachers in the main gym, both gyms?
No, it's outside.
Outside.
Just the football
Just the
stadium.
football
on
stadium,
the
okay.
home side.
On the home side. So we're
The
not
ones
even
that are
talking
built
about the
into
ones
the concrete.
inside.
No.
Okay.
And we're
So-
only
so-
talking about the ones at the football field. We're not talking about the bleachers
Inside.
At Yankee.
at Yankee Field.
Or the
Oh.
drawing
Or-
blank,
or on
concession
the-
stand or
No.
anything like that. There was a whole, we had talked about a range of projects like doing Yankee, expanding the bleachers at Yankee because they're too small for the crowds they get. Expanding, like doing some of the districts, have double-ended, double-sided
Sure.
concession stands with press boxes on top. We
We don't need that.
But then we're talking about just doing the bleachers. There's a whole range of ideas. So they were asking if facilities, to set aside money over 2 years so that they could get bids to get people to come in to look at it and see what we're looking at.
Okay, but for me, set aside dollars over 2 years. This is the fundamental is if we don't have anybody on staff who understands the engineering behind doing the bleachers, there are tons of people who do out there. We should be paying a consulting fee, have them come in, be our representatives, put together a plan. And until then, we shouldn't be putting money aside for, that's crazy.
Well, it's also, this is like the bleachers to me are the definition of the one-time capital expense. The ones that have been there,
Yes,
have we
it
ever
is.
figured out how old they are? They're at least 35 years old because that's how long I've lived here, and they've been here the entire time. And
I'm not certain how old they are.
and do we know what the result was of the inspection that occurred?
I do not know. I have not had a chance to talk to Todd in regards to that.
Has it occurred?
It did occur. I do not, as of Friday, he did not have the written report, and I did not speak with him today, so I do
So
not know.
we don't even know, as a practical matter, how bad the problem is.
Correct.
Yeah, we don't. They were talking about it was anywhere between, it could be a couple months to 2 years. 2.5 years that we
Meaning
had
what?
left until they're
Until what happens?
structurally, until they get restricted from people going on them.
Until something happens.
Until something
Which we
happens.
we're not.
Until they get so bad that they rust apart that we get, holes in them and people are restricted from going on there and they're an actual safety hazard. So that's
Okay.
why they're inspected. 'Cause they haven't been inspected in a while.
They hadn't been inspected for several years, correct.
Okay, well, I don't know how you guys feel, but I propose that we figure out how much money we need and hire a consultant. If we do not have anybody on staff, I'm happy to volunteer my time as an engineer to work with them. Can't be responsible for it because it needs to be somebody who's licensed and insured, but we need to put together a small team of people who understand this stuff to represent the district and put a plan together. Because if it really is a swing of 2 months to 2 years,
Yeah, that's why we're waiting.
it's a
on the-
safety issue if it's 2 months. It's not if it's 2 years.
Right. The other thing is
So-
we'd like to get the ball rolling on planning it so that we're not like, oh my God, we got to do something. If it's 2 months, we don't want to take forever. We'd like to take the time to get it right.
But it's also
So
not
that's-
it's not a building project. We're replacing bleachers.
Yeah.
So
But we just like to take the time to get it right. That's all.
I know.
Instead of like having to do it, before next football.
I-
But that's why we're waiting on the report from Todd, from the inspector.
yeah, but I'm asking if we as a finance committee believe that we should be proposing to the rest of the board to put aside an amount of money, I don't know, $10,000, I don't know that that's a right number or a wrong number, but give a range of dollars that we think need to be done if we do not have anybody on staff who is
Yeah, we should
capable
hire
of doing
somebody.
this.
Is that what we would, is that what it takes?
Yeah, if we don't have anybody on staff who can do that evaluation, you've got to hire somebody as a consultant to do it for you. Can you work with a bleacher firm and say, hey, you come in and do the engineering for us, now we're committed to buying the bleachers from you? Or you see what you can get for free by having different bleacher companies come in and do an evaluation for you. That will give you a sense of the order of magnitude.
Okay.
Is this a big problem or not a big problem?
Okay.
Right?
Well, do we start there and then get a consultant, or do we start with a consultant? I guess that's my question.
No, I would think you'd talk to bleacher. If this was my backyard, I would bring in a couple of different bleacher contractors,
Right.
talk to
Get
them,
three
try and
estimates
get
and-
some, try and just get some information from them, fact gather,
Yeah, find out who like Ridley and Conestoga.
and then make
who
a
else
decision.
Did this recently?
If that's what, if
Conestoga and
this was
Ridley.
in my backyard, that's what I would
That's
do.
what I would do. I mean, that's why I'm
Just-
confused.
But you will need, once we get to that point, if we have nobody on staff, who has knowledge of
Well,
the engineering behind this,
Well,
then
it's
we
Ridley
would
and
need to
Conestoga.
hire somebody, whether it's an architect or somebody, a professional
yeah,
engineer,
but-
Okay,
to
all right.
provide us with the technical guidance to work with whoever we hire,
Okay.
to be the, representative,
Well,
the
if-
district's
I
representative.
guess what I would suggest is that we go through get the three or what, however many, get some estimates, talk to some people, see if we can get educated on them,
But I suggest that we
the
put together a
problem.
small group of people to work on this, to support and help the staff.
Where do we need? We need an architect first to design what we want, then get the bids from the three firms to.
Yeah, but
on
at
that.
this point, you're just bringing in
Yeah.
3 firms to have them
Yeah.
replace what's here.
Yeah.
That's the initial discussion.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing it? What are your services? I mean, we've got a fact gather, and if they haven't done that yet to this point, is
We
what
have
I'm
not.
hearing, we need a small subcommittee of people to work on this together to try and pull together some information.
Is this something our CAC can help with or not?
I don't know.
I wouldn't think so.
Why don't we administratively go back and look, and first off, let's look at what we have on staff, too.
Yeah, 'cause we have some really qualified
yes,
maintenance people, so-
I'm not willing, so we might have people, any kind of project is going to require some type of either engineering or architectural design.
Uh-huh.
So who have we used before in the past would be a question there, but let us administratively go back and look to see who we have on staff, and then what are the next steps, and then we could bring back, bring that back next month. Does that make sense?
That sounds
And
right.
between now and then, if it is decided to put together a small subcommittee or
Maybe that would
something,
be
or
the-
utilize
Yeah.
CAC or something else, then let's get that ball rolling. But maybe some sort of a rough timeline of just on this upfront fact gathering would be helpful.
And I think we need to know what is the impact, the inspection, too. We want to find out what
Right.
happened with that inspection. That's going to be a key piece as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that'll drive everything.
That's gonna drive- yeah.
If it's
If we have
if it's the
time.
bridge is cracked, we're done.
We could be driving what we do next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that said, though, I mean, not that, to me, there is at least some degree of urgency in terms of how that space is used. If it's not being driven by safety, we at least need to understand then what the other utilization is. Because to say that we're going to shut down the football field stands for an entire season,
Right. 'Cause
That doesn't go over well?
no.
No, I know.
All right. And I'm sure there are
Winter's
plenty of
about the-
events, track and field and others that, are.
Say the winter's about the only season you could do it, right? 'Cause lacrosse uses it in the spring, football, track.
Lacrosse doesn't
band.
really use
Yeah,
that
lacrosse
except
doesn't.
for the
Yeah,
Katie
they don't use the
Sampson.
stands. That's true.
Except for the Katie Sampson, lacrosse
Which is
doesn't
in
use it.
April anyway, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, lacrosse is on the concrete steps.
Happy to volunteer a little bit of help there if
Okay,
that can
thank you,
help.
Patty.
Okay. All right. So other than that, on the capital list, but I know that was a big number on the capital list.
It's the biggest number on the
So
capital.
so what is the game plan for that? Because rough numbers off the top of my head because I didn't bring that binder with me, unfortunately. At least based on looking at what was quote unquote safety. Now you've gone back through and kind of reassessed those in terms of the categories that they're in.
We have,
And based on that, it was, there was 900 or some odd $1,000 that were in that bucket. So where are we?
So based on going back and reevaluating all of these things and identifying the ones that are safety or we're recommending get done in 2017-18, some things may be identified as building integrity, but that's a number 2, but you'll see them being proposed to be completed in the 17-18. And the reason for that is it's not really a safety issue. No one's really getting hurt, but there
No, but
are
if the
things
roof
at
is
the
leaking and-
building that we know need to get
Yeah.
done. And so we're recommending those. So the
So-
very last page is where you'll see the summary document.
Yep.
You can see at the very bottom of the page, 17-18, The request that we're recommending is $1,850,000. Cash on hand is the $732,000. And this does include the $1 million for the bleachers, so whatever happens with the bleachers, that would get revised. So the amount needed to complete all the projects identified for 17-18 would require a transfer of the $1,117,000.
So it's $1 million, little over $1 million, that's not in the current budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And like I said, that does include $1
That
million
includes
for
the big number
bleacher.
for the bleachers.
Right,
Bleach-
so hopefully
bleacher
that
project.
number comes down a bit, but regardless, it's well over $500,000 that's not in the budget.
Can I just ask one final question? This is not about bleachers. This is about the earthen roofs. Is this a separate thing from the renovations that were done a year ago?
It is. There are sections of the roof at Ithan that have been identified to be replaced over multiple fiscal years. We did a large portion of the roof, and we did an even larger portion than we had anticipated when we did the renovations, just because of the convenience of,
Right.
doing the repairs and the fact that the new construction was butting up against it. So those numbers for the roofs at Ithan have been adjusted to reflect accurately the cost of the repairs that need to be done.
Okay, thank you.
And you brought up the Ithan roof, just reminds me of, right, so we had some damage to the roof at Ithan when some people came in and
Oh, right, I
cut all
forgot
of the
about The copper.
hoses and the copper and everything off the top. So have we been,
The insurance take care of that?
yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yes, yes, they have.
Made whole by the insurance.
We have been made whole by the insurance company.
Okay.
Did that affect this?
It did not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Next on the list is
Next
the
on the
Citizens
list
Advisory
is
Committee.
the CAC Advisory Committee. I just wanted to let the Finance Committee know that our Citizen Advisory Committee has met on 3 occasions. We met in January on the 23rd and twice in February, on February 2nd and February 15th. We basically pretty much finished the first project, lease versus purchase, and as administrators, we need to do some things internally before our March meeting, where the CAC will come to this Finance Committee and present the findings that they
Cool.
came up with.
Was there, just give us a glimpse in, anything good?
Actually, it was really productive conversation, and I think that everyone's pretty pleased with the outcome from the CAC committee. We just want to make sure that when we come to you and we present the information, that we have everything completed internally that we need to do in order to make the recommendation go smoothly.
So can you give us just idea of how wide-ranged was that? It's everything from copiers to buses?
We looked at everything from copiers to buses. Copiers were recently entered into a new agreement, so it didn't make sense. Some of the conversations were lengthier than the other. I can tell you the bulk of the conversation centered around technology equipment.
Aha, okay, interesting. All right, and that'll be at our March meeting.
At our March meeting, yes.
Excellent. Okay,
So mark it down.
so they're looking for another project.
One of the things that we talked about briefly in our meetings was that as we had these conversations, perhaps we would, as a committee, identify projects that we might be interested or thought could be helpful. So I believe when we come in March, we may have some recommendations for you for some additional projects for us to work on.
Okay. Excellent. I guess, and as committee members, if we've got some ideas, we can always send you an email and.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Sounds good.
Excellent. All right, REF rental space.
So you probably recall some time ago, REF approached us and asked about considering waiving their $750 rental fee. And at that time, and I don't remember, I think it was maybe November or December where we had the conversation, the topic came up of how was the $750 determined, and nobody had any recollection. So I was asked if I could do a summary of what the value of that space is, and that's what you're looking at on this spreadsheet. So what I did was I took all of the identifiable costs that I could identify directly related to the administration building. I took the total square footage of the administration building and the square footage utilized by REF to come up with the cost for each of these things by square foot. So you can see, based purely on square foot for things that we can identify, that it's just under $2,600, the value of that space. One of the things that is not included in this square footage calculation, of course, is cleaning of by our staff. Another thing that's not included is maintenance, if our maintenance men do anything specific in that area, or trash removal. So. Okay.
But it also means insurance. Do they pay insurance?
They have their own insurance.
Have their own
We had
insurance?
building insurance, but they have insurance, and that's not associated with.
So like renters insurance or something like that?
Correct.
Okay, so I have a couple thoughts about this. Thought number one is there any additional call on that space apart from the use by REF? In other words, if they weren't there, would we do something else with the space?
I imagine that we would find a use for the space, yes.
Okay. Thought number two is in there, I have not looked at an REF budget in a very long time. What other administrative costs do they pay to anyone apart from this discussion about rent from us or rent to us?
I do not know the answer to that.
I think they pay their staff.
They pay 2 staff people.
They pay 2 staff people?
Yeah, one's part-time, one's almost full-time. I think she's either like 3/4 time or almost full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then everything else is a donation
Right.
to the district
Yeah.
determined by a committee or
Yeah, they raise the funds and
they raise the funds and there's a committee that
grants
makes a
committee
decision
and
about how we use the grant.
liaisons bring,
So-
requests to them and
so-
they grant it out.
So I hear this and I go, we can collect it in rent, we can collect it in donations, and I think it really comes down to a philosophy as to whether or not it's appropriate for them to pay more fully orbed expenses associated from just existing, which would include reasonably rent to us. But the truth of the matter is, if that space is not high demand space, and they're working to our benefit, really, I mean, for $2,000, $3,000. Do we have any other tenants that?
Can't have tenants.
that
The agreement on this building when we did the renovations, we can't rent space in the building.
So what's the 750?
750 is what they give the district to cover expenses. We call it rent, but it's really to cover their
We're
expenditures.
not allowed to charge rent.
You're kidding.
No, when we built the middle school, there were rules around how this building was to be used. The 3rd floor of this building used to be a
Yeah, it used
rentable
to be
space,
it was a
outside
law
rent.
firm and a
We were not
accountant.
allowed to do that. It was part of the agreement when we did the middle school.
Part of the agreement with whom?
The township to go through all of the land use and everything that we did. All the parking spaces out there, all of that was, that was one of the agreements, was we do not rent the space.
God, they just keep finding ways to screw the district.
So as a practical matter, whether we're calling it rent or we're calling it expenses, it sounds as if,
Yeah,
I don't even think it's not even a discussion. I think we.
Yeah, I mean, we don't charge the PTOs rent for storing the stuff they use for, the spring fair or whatever they do at Ithan and Radnor.
Right, we don't charge, we don't charge,
We don't charge the
Okay, so do we-
we don't charge
we
the
don't charge booster
clubs.
clubs.
But if we do that, then do we just say that those dollars then need to be put back into school-related things? Because if you're going to use those dollars to hire more administrators, then you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
that's- I mean,
problematic
that's-
to me.
well,
So
so-
maybe you put a hook on it.
you
I
know.
don't know. Maybe you don't have to. I don't know. They used to rent space in a place up on Lancaster Avenue.
Yeah.
When we moved into the middle school and this space opened up, we said, okay, let's move in there. It makes sense. But not free of charge. That was never part of the concept. They were renting a public space.
Well,
And we dramatically decreased what their overall costs were.
Well,
about doing
have
that.
the grants to the district increased?
Don't know.
See, I think we're dealing with half information. I mean, if you really want to pursue it, I think it would be helpful to know kind of how their budgeting goes and what it looks like in terms of their gifting back to the district. I'm a little concerned about sort of rent that's not really rent.
It's supposed to offset costs.
It's what?
Offset the costs.
Okay, but we're saying we're not actually really doing that because our costs are in excess of what they're paying us.
I don't think anybody actually did the analysis previously. It was that feels
Yeah,
good.
no, I know. I'm sure it was.
Right?
But we're also talking about $2,600 here. I mean, we've spent more time.
Wait,
Figuring-
their rental amount is,
They currently pay $750
A year.
a year. Correct.
So we're talking about.
then I'm sorry. I thought you said a month.
A year. A year.
I think they should continue to spend the $750 to offset these costs. I mean, what are we talking
The
about?
difference is $1,814.
But it costs
year.
us money to keep the lights on. I mean,
I mean, part of my argument is like what Susan was getting at. If they weren't there, we'd still have to maintain that spot anyway. You know, and they give the district
How much
$100,000 a year.
I'm not certain how much they give.
Yeah,
It's a significant amount of
I'm
money.
looking past you guys and looking at Tony because he's
You
on the
know,
board
it's
with me,
like
so
it's
like
like
$100,000.
it's
Yeah.
like we'll take it in the right hand, we'll take it in the left hand. I don't even want to spend any more time talking about a couple of $1,000. It's just not worth it.
it's not $1,000. It's $750
$750.
a year.
Right. That's what I'm.
I don't care. Somebody else decide. It's not that big a deal.
The
For
sole
me,
purpose.
it's the principle of
I
sharing in
understand.
the cost of what goes on in your building.
Okay,
in
and
the building you're in.
and that's where I started,
Right.
and so I guess I don't care either. I think it's reasonable to ask them for something, but the truth is they're giving us $100,000 a year for other things. So
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a little
Michael,
too.
you could just say we don't have to do it.
I don't think so because we don't. I mean, we don't charge the PTOs or the booster clubs for space.
They don't have office space.
But the PTOs store stuff at the schools.
They do have storage.
You know, so they have storage, and this is like their office is in the basement. And I know that West we store stuff in the basement.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is waive the $750.
If they want to waive the $750.
And you're struggling with it, and I really am agnostic on it, so
So
I guess we'll propose to waive the $750 with a clear understanding that they have their own insurance, you know, that the district is not liable for anything else that's going on in that space.
right, and they can't get any more space. They can have their corner, and we thank them, and that's it.
So I will reach out to Meg at Ref.
And we expect $750 more in something than we would have otherwise
Yeah,
got.
the next meeting I would want to see that number up.
Okay. All righty, so let's move on. Boy, that one took longer than it really was
Yeah.
worth. Okay.
You think?
Next on the list is update on subs.
So the charts are charts that Mr. Stitzel's been supplying to us for quite some time so that we can look at our substitute usage. Unfortunately, Todd is not here today, so I will try to do my best to explain the charts that you have attached here. These are the same charts that you're used to seeing. So the first chart will show the total number of absences by building, and it'll show where subs weren't needed, subs needed, absences filled, and unfilled absences.
When we say just subs not needed, meaning?
There's a number of reasons why a sub would not be needed. For example, a librarian could be out and we might not replace them, or a
Okay.
guidance counselor.
Okay, thank you.
So when we look at the next chart, this shows just the absences for the month of January. So you can see we had 643 absences. And then it shows subs not needed, sub needed, absences filled, and absences not filled. The next chart shows the fill rate. It shows the prior year history. Mr. Stitzel changed this a little bit so that January would be next to January. Before it was just all 1 year, and it was a little bit harder to see. So you can see the fill rate in January was at 72%. In 2015, it had been at 88%. So one of the things that's concerning about this chart, when you look at this chart, is you can see as you go into February, March, and April, the fill rate starts to drop considerably from where it had been at the previous years all the way up through the end of the school year. So that is concerning to us. And the very last page is a summary of absences. Again, this slide was changed, this graph was changed so that you can see January next to January. You can see if you compare January in 2016, we were at 374 absences, which is pretty consistent to January of 2015 at 382. And in January of 2017, we had 643 absences. So the absences have had a significant increase. And you can see that we have had some larger increases as well in absences.
But again, these absences also include people who are out for chronic, long-term.
It does, and that's what the next slide shows. The next graph here will show the absence by the type of absence it is. So you can see if you look at the middle school, for example, just regular everyday illnesses. At the middle school in January, there were 101 days that people were out. 40 of the days were related directly to some sort of a family medical leave or a leave of absence. 13 were personal days. 36 were school business, and 7 were other.
Right, but illness then incorporates.
Anybody who's got if you're out because you have a protracted illness, cancer or something, so that's 22 days a year or in the month that you're gone.
I know, but without having that split out, it's hard to tell whether we have other issues.
So one of the things that Mr. Stitzel's been very sensitive to is not being able to privacy.
Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm.
So in those illness days, you could have somebody who is on an extended medical illness.
Yeah,
but
so
they
if
have
you're out for the
6
school
days.
year, it's 22 days of this 101 could be one person who's out for the month.
Correct. Absolutely.
And 101 is, what are we measuring there? That's a school day not there for
Correct.
7 hours or 8 hours?
Maybe what we could do in terms of trying to keep the privacy piece of it, but not, but still give some granularity is, could we say how many people that represents? So 101 days is comprised of, 8 people or 30 people, just to kind of give us a sense of what that magnitude is.
I can ask Todd if he can include that. I'll make a note.
Because if it's 101 and it's 3 people,
Yeah.
it's clear you've got.
Yeah, 'cause
Right.
the jump
Well,
from January
and of course it's
15
just-
to 17 is double.
Yeah, but,
Well, and but that stuff I don't know if you
Right,
can
that's-
predict it, but you might be able to predict it if you know that you've got.
the stomach thing that's been running through every household in the Delaware Valley, my guess has got to be a piece
Away
of
from
this.
mine, we're okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't hear.
I know.
She left the country.
I
I
get
ended
off
up
and
in
on
an
those
ambulance.
planes, and all I think is, oh my God.
So we'll continue to look at absences every month
Okay.
as we go through the school year. I know that when we looked at this last month, Todd had indicated that we had increased the number of building subs that were reporting on a regular basis.
So that was the other piece that I would be interested next month when we talk about these. So can we look at what is happening with regards to the,
Yeah, the building, so how effective are they? How?
is that working any better? Should we have more?
Okay.
Should we, because of the sub-crisis is not going away, do we just get more proactive on it?
Yeah, well, and I mean, I've already had some offline conversations about this, but I think we ought to be, as we had discussed several times, the guest teacher program, we ought to be much more
Well,
active.
DCIU is definitely trying to work that angle, training people and stuff
Training
like that.
people who are in the community who,
Well, yeah.
you know,
so we
would
need
be
to talk about that.
interested and available.
Okay. All right. March 21st finance meeting.
So this is on the agenda because the Finance Committee meeting in March, Todd and myself and Penny will be at the PASBO conference on the 21st. So we
won't be
might
there
want
either.
to consider changing the date that we're going to have that meeting.
Okay, bear with, because I gotta get my calendar. Where did I put that?
I'm not going to be here either.
So let's just do a marathon night on the 14th.
All right, bear with me one second.
Right?
Or
Do it after facilities on the 4th, or is policy?
I can't, on the week of the 14th, yeah, I'm out of the country. Could we do it when is the PASPA thing, all week?
we're actually, yes, it is. We're actually leaving Tuesday in the morning. Because the PASBO conference is in Pittsburgh this year.
Could we do, I mean, I know it's not far away. Well, first, what was on the agenda? We don't have an agenda.
We do not have an agenda for the 21st meeting.
But the plan for March, if I'm not mistaken, was we were hoping to hear back from the high school on staffing in March, or was that April?
I believe that's April.
It's closer to April, yeah.
All right. So the March meeting would be citizens advisory, like if we were just to say what's on the agenda to see how that impacts what dates we pick. So citizens advisory committee, feedback, which should be able to be okay anytime in March, right?
Correct.
And any kind of budget update, but that's just whatever it is at the moment in time, so there's nothing time constraining about that.
We should know about Act 1 exceptions at that point in time, but that'll all be rolled in with the budget update
And subs.
and substitute teachers.
Which is just an ongoing update.
So it's a pretty light agenda for March.
Well, you can't do the 14th, did you say?
No.
What about the 7th?
I could, that's what I was thinking, was I could do the 7th if we
Do we need, well,
needed
do
to,
we
but that's
need
what
the
I'm trying to
meeting, or do we?
Well, that's what I'm trying to
just-
figure out, if what was on the list.
Do you mean if we phone in or no?
I'm going to Rome. I'm not going to be here.
And our April meeting right now would be on the 18th, is that right? Is that right?
Correct.
The 18th of April
It's too
and
far out.
75.
It's just update, can we do it on the 28th before the, I mean, the 7th, I think what's
Do it before the exec.
Oh,
That's what
isn't
you
it 28th for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
No, the 28th of this month is there, we're looking at March.
March.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at March, 28th is
My only concern with doing it on the 7th
March 28th.
is we won't be able to have that timeline done.
Oh, right. So then the 28th would give more time for that time.
We do it before exec.
That's all.
On the 28th.
Can we keep? Yeah, if we have to, we have to.
You certainly can do the meeting on the 21st without Todd, myself,
No.
or Penny.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure.
Ken, you're
We'll
on
just
your
sit
own.
around and talk to ourselves.
You will have been here by 6 weeks by
We
then.
do that
You can do
anyway,
it.
right?
All right. Well, do you guys mind if we try and do it
Swing.
on the 28th of March, just a little bit early?
Sure.
On the 28th of March before the exec.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
we could shoot for
5 is-
4 o'clock?
That's the full board meeting.
Right, but the full board exec starts at 6, so we could do 4:30? It's a light agenda.
That's fine.
4:30 on the 28th with this agenda items that we just talked about, unless something And could we maybe take an action item to find out if we can just do it right at the township building?
I was gonna say here.
Yeah, we've done it before, right before. So if they'll let us start at 4:30 that night, and then we can just wrap up and go right into exactly before the board meeting.
They'll probably charge us $600.
Okay, does that work?
Yeah, I think I'm in the wrong month here. Yeah, it's not in February, it's in March.
March.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the last item on the agenda is I attached a copy of the governor's 2017-18 proposed budget in brief, just for your reference.
Right. Oh, ready? Okay. Does anybody have any other topics? Nope.
No.
Cool. No more from over there? No. Okay.
Public comment?
Public comment. Member of our Citizens Advisory Committee, Mr. Webster. Welcome.
Hi, Dan Webster, 242 Ravenscliff Road. I'm not here in my capacity as a member of the Citizens Advisory.
Okay.
So don't ask me any questions.
Okay.
Just a couple, on that subject though, Patty, you suggested that you need a small group of people to work on this bleacher issue. Maybe the booster groups aren't a big source of funding for this, but you likely have some parents, because there are a lot of people in the band and the football team.
Yep.
That might have expertise that could be beneficial. You're not talking about it's not brain surgery what you're trying to do here. It's just a process that you need somebody to marshal. Mm-hmm. And I think you probably find some good resources there. And, of course, interested people as well. The second comment I had was regarding the capital improvement budget. There's $700-some thousand that's defined as cash on hand. And I think what's meant there is that's money that's sitting in the capital improvement fund that's left there. But hopefully, when you're considering your capital improvement plans, you're looking at every project on its own merits and not just saying there's $700,000 there to spend, so let's do the bleachers because we already have money in the fund. That's an obvious thing, and I think that's probably more for the Facilities Committee anyway, but I just wanted to point out the obvious. And then lastly, on the substitutes, I guess it's hard to interpret those graphs without some more information, like how many people were involved. The spike in January certainly is noticeable, but I would just like to say overall, as the parent of a high school senior, that I would hope that you're considering the quality of the substitute roles and not just the quantity when you're talking about fill rates, because I do know that there are situations where substitutes are brought in to kind of babysit the class. They don't actually teach. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I haven't been paying attention to the discussions you've been having about raising the rates, but certainly it would be ideal if you could bring people in as substitutes who actually taught the class and didn't just sit there with them. Mm-hmm. And I guess given the fill rates, so not 100%, I guess you probably end up with a lot of classes where there's nobody there with the students, so the students have to go someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my
that
comments.
has
Thank
been
you.
the challenge for sure. Okay, any other? All righty then. Thank you.
Thank you.